With Strixhaven we got one of the first peaceful environments in any Magic the Gathering set. This gave us a unique view into the world of Arcavios, Strixhaven and eventually into its biggest building, the Biblioplex. In this building there were books from all over the world, resulting in the Mystical Archive, which is also the name of the beautiful alternate art cards from the set. Today I want to dive deep into this huge set of alternate spells that made the format so unique. Also, if you like this video, don't forget to subscribe. Imagine your first day on the only magical school in the entire multiverse. You come in after your 5-week trip through the desert on a sloth, and as you wipe away the sweat from your brows, you see the grand central archway of the school. Students are bustling around, most visible the other first years that are just as excited as you are. In front of you, the statue of the first headmaster of the school, after the 5 founders, and behind that, with an ever grander magical star ring, the most impressive building of Strixhaven, the Biblioplex. You move in, skipping the annoying guide pods to see the massive building. You don't even dare to look up at the massive arc that is out of picture as you look over the giant bridge. This, as you have been told many times, is the Biblioplex of Strixhaven, a massive library with books from all over the multiverse. Worlds outside of Arcavios were a myth outside of Strixhaven, but you could not help but be immensely curious about the stories from other worlds. Maybe even as curious as the Biblioplex was tall. You enter the massive library and in front of you is one massive book. It magically opens itself in front of you and there is a depiction of a woman with open arms as she feels the knowledge of the universe enter her mind. It says that it's illustrated by Justin and Alexis Hernandez. Beneath it, you can read that infinite ideas flow through the multiverse, waiting for an open mind. What profound knowledge, you mumble, and you vow to let your mind be open as you continue through the library. You were never one for extensive reading. You were more inclined to take the most important lessons from the vastness of the universe, and you start to imagine this library to be just as vast. This first book was a great introduction to the Biblioplex. You choose to walk past and you see a big sign with 4 new students on it. You choose to take the recommended path and here you see 5 colored sections. There must be the introductions to the 5 colleges of Strixhaven. You start with Witherbloom. This corner of the entry room seems grimy and dirty and the smell was awful. The book seemed used for something, but you look for a fine looking book, not judging the college by its cover, because you know a lotus cannot grow without dirt. The first book you open has a large picture of a regal character touching another and the king instantly decays into the ground. Mintu Hininen made this piece. The art seems so clean and holy while the act seems so gruesome. You read the flavor from monarch to mulch as quick as could be. Yep, this was definitely a finite murder and the queen did not want the king to return. This must have been a power-hungry queen. Down in the fine lines you see that these kinds of murder were common on Fiora, from Marchesa's reign onwards. Okay, so everything dies, I knew that. You choose to read through, and as if to convince you that the school can be good, you find the note of Dean Valentin. You read about a spell that lets you sacrifice your own life force in order to cast more powerful spells. Dean Valentin says, as long as you are breathing, you always have something more to give. So the Witherbloom think everything dies, so they are equal and we should all give some to the cause. Okay. You know that Dean Valentin often urges his students to give more so that he can take from their gifts and feed his pests. He is obsessed with them. So you choose to read on with caution. After the greasy pages of other Witherbloom books, you find a clean page that also smells weirdly nice. It shows a person tending to their garden, looking at their plants as if to lift them up with magic. And then the sunflower in the background seems to say that plants reflect everything the universe has to offer. Lisette noted that you should be amazed about how much a single plant has to teach us. An inspiring message, and I now understand why I would give my breath to grow these other plants. There is a small note with a weird looking version of the spell too. Inspired by Lisette, I read on. All seeds share a common bond, calling to each other across infinity. I had heard the rumors about other worlds, and it seems like an amazing concept that plants would be able to communicate with each other, across worlds. I get why they are so wise now. I can't wait to learn how to talk with plants. So I read on just a little bit to find a note from a student. It says it is from exemplary student Dina. It says that nature is neither cruel nor kind. It operates on necessity, not sentiment. I now understand these words and how the Witherbloom still love nature. They give it to nurture it. Because it is natural. It is supposed to be that way. In the natural order, you sometimes have to sacrifice to find a new, larger creature, and like that, nature grows on. The artist Anato Finstar did a great job showing that unlike with Cultivate, where the sunflower was the universe, now a greater beast is trying to fight up to the universe, and as such, nature will always endure. That's weirdly comforting. But okay, let's shake this and look onto Quandrix. They are aligned with nature, right? They look at it in a very different way than Witherbloom. Quandrix loves to look at what drives nature, rather than just letting it grow. They do make colossal works of growing creatures to unnatural proportions. You get to Quandrix's corner and right away you note that all books are neatly arranged in unknown patterns that feel pleasing to your eye after the greasy Witherbloom books. Let's start with the main book again. This one is written by Kiana, the Dean of Quandrix that leads by example. They should not like books. It says, I have gleaned greater insight from the spiraling of a single fern than I have from all the books I have ever read. She probably placed this book here. Imbraham's version must be way more theoretical. Kiana just teaches us to also look outside. There's a small note in the bottom of the page. It says, cyclical and spiral patterns are the specialty of the Gaia clade, which seeks to revitalize the cycles of nature. This is a warning from another world. In Seth MacKinnon's art you see the buildings of a world called Ravnica. Those have been built by a former Simic clade. Now the Gaia clade seeks to use the spirals of nature to restore the balance to the uneven buildings of the city. Dean Kiana must have been inspired by this world when she wrote this and learned about this spell from the people of the Gaia clade. As there are people that strive to restore nature, there are people that guide its process by not letting everything grow. Imbraham is apparently the dean for this school of thought. His book was a huge palm on the front, showing us how mountainously important saying no is to him. The first page states, one need not know the specific details of a spell to suppress its effect. Simply rearrange the rules of the reality within which the spell operates. Whoa, so stopping a spell can be done by altering reality? That seems very overkill, but cool too. The Quandrix school really likes to be grand in their gestures, but they like rules even more, so it seems. I wonder why anyone would choose Quandrix, and my eye is caught by a painting from Dominic Meyer. It shows a large blue man, said to be a Vedalken on Mirrodin. In the background we see a plane ridden with war as they are being attacked by robot monsters. Whoa, it says here that the Vedalken still wanted to solve a big puzzle, so they turn their backs towards violence until they cannot. I read a note from a student called Simone. 5 suns? Can you even imagine how complicated the orbital calculations must be? But I wouldn't give to tackle an equation like that. Eureka! It strikes me now why the Quandrix like their rules. It gives them insight in how the world, or worlds, work. That is massive. Let's read on then. There is a depiction of the Vedalken people here. It shows a quote from one of the Vedalken people. They apparently had to stop their research into the origin of their world because they were attacked by these robot monsters. I hope Simone can still get back to the world sometime. The page says, the origin query will wait. We must ensure we survive to return to it. Well, maybe Simone will be able to return to this world and solve this equation sometime. Enough calculation talk for today. Let's talk about something fun that is still about perfecting a craft. The Prismari site shows all kinds of artwork from students, and it is really hard to see any information through the forest of artistic presence here. It seems like the students were having fun, at least. Books in these corners were small and with big pictures, but I did not mind. The introduction book began with a spell about exploding electric currents by compressing them together. Is this really what the first year Prismari students learn? I read a journal entry of an Is It wizard, a very experimental kind as I read their notes. The hydraulic power grip was a failure, but the gauntlets were a shocking success. Apparently this book is meant to teach us that even in failure there might be a lesson, as long as it is a grand one, preferably with an explosion. Okay, this seems fun. After some reading about more ways to explode water by freezing it fast, I look for the dean's explanations. It's pretty hard to find them in this mess. Then I find a small tablet with letters scorched in on it. Turning it around, I see a depiction of art by Mintu Hininen. It shows us a mage that is jumping towards a prize, all the way over lava as the bridge beneath his feet crumbles away. Nasari, the dean of Prismari, noted on the other side that if the prospect of what could be doesn't electrify you to your core, why attend Strixhaven at all? Again with the electricity, huh? It also seems fitting that there is so little written down. It even seems like Nasari scorched these letters into the tablet in one morning, just because he wanted to. More than that, it was a profound lesson. Maybe he felt angry at students that were not electrified enough. On the ground I see a depiction of a fairy tale knight reaching for the same sort of magic while they climb a thorny tree. Nasari has written on it with, "Students should be bold like Sir Kara." Under the depiction of the knight we see their quote, "Remember all the great heroes who were careful and never did anything risky? Me neither." Apparently the Prismari live to be remembered, or they live for the possibility of doing something risky, so that they will be remembered. Risk before reward, or so it seems. I look for a written object from the other dean, Uvilda. At this point an elephant comes up to me and puts his hand on me. I had never seen an elephant before this moment, as they are shunned from on Arcavios, but I greet him warmly with curiosity. He asks me what I am looking for, and when I tell him, he tells me he tried to be in Prismari first. Exactly because of the reason that Uvilda, the second Prismari dean, always taught by example. He quotes her, "Learning to imitate a master is the first step in becoming one." I look at the elephant again, dust on his clothes and goggles all around. I ask him where he is from and his face lights up. He tells me all about his people, before I can stop him. I meant to ask what school he was from, and his face lights up even brighter. "I enrolled in the school of Lorehold," he said proudly. "I am now almost finished with my classes. Lorehold is the school of adventure and history. I have never seen you around, so you must be new. Let me show you the introductory book of my college. Oh yeah, my name is Quint." I was a little taken aback by this new mentor I got, but he showed me another art from Mintu Hininen, showing a strong warrior holding up a fist into the sky and electricity coming up to it from all sides. Quintorius explained that I should like this part of history if I liked the intro book of Prismari. He read, "Mages in the Blood Age would call down actual thunderstorms on their enemies. I bet we can replicate their technique." Quint said that we should not replicate their techniques mindlessly. We should practice with calling for lightning like the Prismari do, but then also work on improving the magic. For example, by granting power to ourselves and others from the lightning, instead of just using it to damage others. There are two sides to the Lorehold College. We look at history in two ways. One is Dean Blark's manner. He likes to see things with chaos in mind. I remember stealing things from an excavation site and he asked me this: "How did you get your hands on that?" Wait, never mind. I don't want to know. See, he respects history, but also knows that it should be changed. So he respects us wanting to take artifacts and bringing them somewhere else, for example. He likes us defiling the normal ways, and that is just like with this artwork, where Carly Mazur took pieces of art and smashed them together to make something more interesting. Now, our other dean does not agree with this school of thought. Whenever we touch magic artifacts, she tells us to be careful when handling old magical trinkets. You never know who they have been. She wants history to be orderly, and she does not agree with Blark's chaos theory. I think we need a balance of both sides. Instead of just letting history be, or always trying to change it, we should look at it and change it for the betterment of the world. We should always be careful with our actions. And we should be so with our words too, a newcomer said. This newcomer was known to me. It's Killian, who is always famous for his prowess in a duel. They say that he has never lost one. The master duelist lays a hand on Quince, who seems uncomfortable with the man, as if Killian was not always this nice. Killian continues. A newcomer, huh? Well, let me show you the Silverquill way of being careful. The Silverquill are careful because we know that our words have power. We know how strong even an inkling of a thought could be when you let it come to life. Our campus reflects this, as we try to let it be as simple as possible while still holding power. Killian holds up a book. As you have been into history just now, let me tell you a story too. One of a dragon god that could jump between planes. He was all-powerful and could control whole worlds with his mind. He could defeat all of the other planeswalkers one by one, but that was no fun to him. He tried to defeat them all at once, and in doing so, he lost everything. I exclaimed, a tale of a tyrant being humiliated and losing all his power? I am inspired already. Killian smiled. I said the same when I started at Strixhaven. Have you heard of Axis? I nod furiously. Killian tells me that he will show me something about Axis later, but first wants to show him the dangers of Silverquill. He shows me the notes of his father, Dean Ambrose. You see what my father writes here? My colleagues revile the barbarity of the Blood Age, but I believe we have much to learn from the magics of endless war. I hear Quinn scoffing at the mention of learning from the Blood Age, and Killian seems to agree. See, this spell lets you sacrifice a friend for knowledge. There are many prices I would pay for knowledge, but friendship is never one. At this, Quinn seems to relax too. Quinn takes out another book about sacrifices in other worlds. He shows us a depiction of people standing around a fallen man. See, here we see people from the plane of Innistrad. There are many monsters here, and it has made the humans there monstrous enough to sacrifice their own friends for their own safety. Now, if you have no other choice, I could understand this, but we should strive to never let this happen to our world. Now, the more dangerous people are people like those from Kaldheim. He shows us a gruesome depiction of a man with blood scars. It says here that the Skella raise scorn poles in conquered villages, cursed totems of wood and bone that sap survivors of physical strength and the will to fight back. They do this for fun, even, and Killian here suspects his father to be doing his aggression for the same reasons. Killian nods and says, but look at this other book from our Dean, Shell. She taught me a valuable lesson, which is to not let power and the opportunity for more power be your detriment. She wrote it down here. It's always my brightest students who make the worst decisions. Words can be powerful, and it can be even easier to see yourself changing other minds and think the same could never happen to yourself. but especially in the College of Silverquill, you have to be careful about what you believe in, and I choose friendship. Quint has taught me this too. Shill has also taught me, and I can be strong on my own, but even stronger with friends. That's what I believe. Now, you were wondering about access, but for that we have to say goodbye to Quint for now. Quint raised an eyebrow and said, "You're going to the forbidden parts of the library, huh?" And Killian nodded simply. Meanwhile, I had learned so much already and was ready for more. We leave Quint to move into a side room. Killian had to perform a spell to get us in here. We moved through a half full of journals. Killian explains that these are from the teacher Kasmina, who is a planeswalker herself. She uses these journals to write down everything about the planeswalkers she meets. First of all, Killian shows me a page about a fairy planeswalker that can manipulate stone. Apparently she has been in a fight with a vampire planeswalker, much like Dean Valentine. That must be a harsh fight then. Apparently the two are still fighting as of today. I read that with her anger, Nahiri grew in power, but lost parts of her fighting prowess, making her more of a spellslinger, a massively powerful one. Dominic Meyer's depiction shows that at first she was able to control swords, and now she uses her second ring of power full of stones. I tell Killian that teleporting geomancers and vampires are a scary prospect, to which he laughs. Apparently, Killian thinks I like electrical shocks now, so he shows me something that extend to calm me down. Ralzarak's research notes. Apparently it's a bestseller on this plane called Ravnica. There is one small segment about a small goblin that keeps it being attacked by the heavens. Ral writes, "To this day, I have no idea if the heavens were obeying him or attacking him. I will watch a video about it later, by clicking the small excerpt in the top right of my screen." Huh? I am glad Killian did not hear my weird words as he shows me a piece about a huge war. Apparently not everyone chose to fight against the robot monsters. The same I have seen before, but a lot stronger. Teferi was a planeswalker that did not want to be in this fight, so he chose to phase himself and his homeland out of existence for a good 10 years. That is some impressive power that the Quandrix might not even be able to pull off. Next to Mintu, Hininen's depiction was another one drawn by Teferi himself. The two elephants were still here in this piece, and you can see the exact same robot monsters. Here they are called Phyrexians in the sky. The city is literally facing out together with this huge army. Nice to see that there is some good in the world, although he did leave the rest of the world to lose a war. And it could be way worse. Killian continued with the next page about Tezzeret, who sided with the Phyrexians, or whoever would promise him more knowledge. The man came from Esper, the same place as the Fodalkan Simone wrote about. I hope they could still do their calculations with this man around. I read about the man never wasting any resources. Kasmina really wrote a lot about him. He must be important. His metal arm was a way to prove himself in his own school. I am glad I do not have to do the same for Strixhaven. Tezzeret's gambit is always about stealing new technology and knowledge. I think that is why Kasmina had this page illustrated by Jason Felix, just so that we know that knowledge and power can be stolen, and it is never safe with people like Tezzeret around. Then there was a page from Kasmina about planeswalking. It was scribbled full of pictures with owls. As I knew that Kasmina used owls for her magic, I assumed she saw her own magic before entering the Blind Eternities. Apparently, planeswalkers walk between planes by entering their own essence of magic, before moving through a vastness of nothing, only to re-emerge in a plane that has magic that is like their own. Traveling to different places than that is harder. Kasmina writes, every planeswalker remembers the first time their mind touched the staggering vastness of the multiverse. Yeah, I understand that such a big place must be scary. The Biblioplex felt the same to me this morning. I imagine rushing for the first familiar thing you find. Killian hands me another book. He seems invested in planeswalking too. He tells me he is looking for other people with a spark, whatever that is. This book seems a lot darker. I open it to see multiple angels be slain. Apparently this weapon lets you kill any good aligned being with a part of the blind eternity. Apparently this text is from a demonic planeswalker. An angel can shine like the sun, inspire the weak, and even threaten victory over darkness. But in the end it matters not, for it still dies like any other pest. I wonder what pests have to do with angels, but this blinded angel must have been stupid to wear a halo over their eyes. Let's read on. One little word was all it took. The world shook as I said it. The doom of Zendikar was here at last. I read that the angels of Zendikar wore their halos to show that they were blind in trying to fight against another interplanar threat called the Eldrazi. Here I read that just being reminded by the blind eternities was enough to destroy these angels, and Omnixilis, the demon planeswalker, learned about the secret to misplace his anger on these angels. That's a heavy depiction on this art from Raymond Swanland. Killian said that he had to go soon, so he would drop me off in the Forbidden Chambers. He handed me a book for later and told me to open it. It was a book with strong spells that could teach you to planeswalk. The first page was a weirdly safe one. Try to come in contact with nature and balance, and when you hear the forest, you will see that the bloody din of invasion fades and silent song rings through the forest again. Apparently this is written by a planeswalker that was very in tune with nature herself. I must ask the Witherbloom about this. Killian smiles. We talk for a little bit and then he points me to the next room as he leaves. I enter a small room full of trinkets and glowing artifacts. I see a beautiful small painting of a man whose head broke and his hand even crumbles. There is the fake depiction of another man behind the first, showing that the first man has resigned to a faith laid upon him by another. As if it does not really matter. As if this was just a matter of business. There is a sadness in the first man, but it is a calm one for being shot through the head. I read who put this piece from Morphina Guy up. It's Extus Nar, the exiled student from Strixhaven who has attacked the school just a few years ago. Apparently this room should remind someone to look out for students that do not feel any passion. Extus wrote, "It takes so little energy to erase a person. It's almost like the universe doesn't care that they existed at all. And after reading so much about all-powerful planeswalkers, I cannot imagine believing that life is meaningless." So, I read on, interested in the exiled one's reasoning. I read about his past and how he had been treated before, how no one believed in him, and how he had always felt exiled. When he started looking for too much power, people shoved him away, being scared of the Blood Age returning, probably. Here we see a depiction of the demon that was inside of Extus all along, from Robbie to Reno. It shows us how even without the act of elimination, Extus always felt like he was already stabbed by his past and that demonic presence eventually outgrew him. Extus wrote, "Guilt is not absolution. Regret is not justice, but it is right that you suffer." What a broken man. Okay, enough for this now. Let's go back to the normal books. I re-enter the bustling main hall of the library. There is still so much to explore. I start with an entry from the director of Strixhaven, Taiva. It shows a girl that seems linked to the universe, as there is so much knowledge around her of animals and exploration and places she has been. But not all is in touch with her earthly self. Some is floating back to the universe, back to the source, for other open minds to pick up. Much like the intro to the Biblioplex said, director Taiva writes, "Where do our forgotten thoughts go? I knew once, but I can't remember. Must be hard to almost remember something so profound." I see scribbled another depiction of a girl with the same hair from Cracked Stables. Under it is scribbled, "What a lonely agony, the memory of memories lost." Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking. The girl knows she has a keyhole but cannot quite fathom the key on a chain that she needs as it flows away from her. Ugh, how dark. I need to get out of the extra story. I see a book on the first table I get to. It says, The History of Arcavios. Quint must have planted this here. The intro is a message from Jatsi, the famous oracle of our world. She is the wisest person alive, but still she insists on this quote. I can offer only information, young one. What path you choose is up to you. This is why so many seek out the oracle. She always tells you what to know in order to make your own decisions. In fact, most never get to her as they learn their own answers before finding the oracle. This is why she says that the journey is often more important than the destination. Or the oracle might just want to be alone. Then I move to the first piece of art I saw from the library. It's from Cristina Colantes, and it shows one of the old ones from the Fastlands being touched by the gift of magic. My family stems from the old ones, so they often showed this and the tale that comes with it. It is about our ancestors, who sought magic to bring peace to their lands. But then when they became too powerful, evil came to our lands. These were called the Mystic Ages, just after the Blood Age. In this book, it says this magic brought peace to the Fastlands but was soon corrupted. Seems about right. We could be one of the most enlightened people on Arcavios right now, but because of this corruption, this blackness in our purity, we keep ourselves back. We should always watch out for becoming too powerful. Or else, I imagine we would look something like this. Anger in our eyes, all the blood to our heads, our body devoid of feeling as all of it went to our hands. Because we want to feel our opponents' faces against our fists in a glorious fighting moment. I did not know that becoming angry was a spell, but apparently you can bring out emotions. Maybe much like the Silverquill and Prismari do. It says here about Faradorn sorcerers that some mages duel using intricate spellcraft and superior tactics. Others just get really mad. That does seem like it's not a secret, but what do the mountain people even know? Not much, I assume. Of course, the history book goes on with reasons for war, and next up is the first mage that conjured lightning. The book says that the first mages witnessed the fury of the raging storm and wished to answer back. So that is why people started working with lightning magic. It seemed awfully dangerous to me, but judging by the art from Anato Finstark, this mage was in the mountains, which makes me think less of the people from the mountain region again. At least the mages from the Blood Age that Quinn told me about used their magic to empower others too, instead of just conjuring thunder. Although it seems better to conjure power out of curiosity than in order to try to hurt others. On the other side, I found another piece from Justin and Alexis Hernandez. I recognized this piece from the enemy of my people, who destroyed the old towns of the Loxodon people. Out of nowhere, he would cast a massive spell of destruction, and the old people of the desert would be destroyed. So why is Brook, destroyer of cities, so downtrodden in this art? Was it not a glorious day for him? Even his ride seems like he did not want this moment to happen. I read on about Brook the Skyhammer, as he is apparently called, and although this seems like an epic name, it seems like Brook himself was not too happy with his act. I wonder why, and then it dawns on me when I read that, thus, Brook the Skyhammer earned his epithet and won the war, all in one very moment. He just wanted the war to end fast. If he could do this all along, then he took his time. It seems like he had no choice but to end the war fast. Maybe if he could have phased out his lands, he would do the same as the fairy. Maybe they should meet sometime. I mean, a time wizard could do so, right? I know about this part. After the war, the Mystic Age started. It seems like we needed to destroy so many people to get to this point, but my parents always told about our good people that would plant the seed after our war, that would repopulate the world with the beauty of nature again. Here, I still smile when I read that centuries of war had broken Arcavios, but a single seed began the long process of renewal. I guess my people were not as good, but did have the right intentions, I hope. After a short lunch to let everything sink in, I return to the chamber with books from other worlds. I start reading fables, as I have had a little too much real world stuff for today. I start with an epic heroic tale from Theros. It was a shorter story about a hero that would attack a big sea monster for 12 days and 12 nights. Somat assailed the monster's shell. On the 13th morning it cracked with the dawn. Apparently the hero had needed the help from a sun god to defeat this big monster. I think this is a story telling people to keep on fighting. Very basic stuff. But the monster seemed very interesting to me. A monster that would be protected against anything and that was as big as a city that could not defeat one human, because the human was probably even more indestructible. That is inspiring even with how basic of a story it is. Next up, I read a story about a people from far away that lost their lands long ago, and even though their lands existed of just sand and rocks, other people strove to take their place. One day the princess of those people, who had chosen her people over the lands, received a gift from the sun. A small box with a ring in it. A ring that would signify her people's return into the lands. It was the ring of the people that had taken the lands. They had left it with the note that they could never use the lands and that the princess could have it back. I think Justinet Alexis Hernandez showed this moment very well with such a motherly gaze from the princess. The small excerpt underneath the piece said, "We asked for a home and received the world. I guess for my people, our home is our world too." I suddenly felt an ache, a longing for my home and my world. But this new world had so much to offer too. I look for a longer book, getting my appetite for reading back slowly. It's a book about the world of Fiora again, where a tyrant would only be followed by a new one and everyone always worked against each other. One way they did this was by pulling money away from others, because everything should be in balance. This was a law instated by people long before Fiora existed, and it meant that whenever you take something, you should give something back. But as balance is never equal, the weak would lose to the strong in such a society. I read that the tyrant's bellow of rage trailed off into a whimper as the last of his fortune escaped his grasp. Seems legit. I see another version of this move. Here we see money again, but this time we see a human on the other side of the scale. This is the problem with such a society where everything must be equal and every act must be returned. It is that human life should never be valued. I read, "Those who seek to upset the balance must be taxed for such ambitions." Apparently the high priest wanted to keep the system alive, probably because he was the powerful one. The man was probably not ambitious but rather righteous. Such a shame. I recognize the introduction art for Witherbloom in the Putrefy spell. This was apparently in the same Dethronus grimoire. I remember the Queen Marchesa that would take the power. It is a shame that she would be a tyrant too, because she seems capable of making the world a better place. If she only cares about power, shouldn't she want to make her land stronger instead of turning it into mulch? I read on in another book of an unknown world, where Knight Catherine goes on a quest, but through her adventure she keeps choosing the right paths, which must lead to her own inevitable demise. At some point the webs of the forest become too much, and as she lays her shield down, a potion emerges in her hand, one that was exactly the right kind to heal her wounds and make her able to finish her quest. The story makes it even more unlikely. It says that Knight Catherine closed her eyes, bracing herself for the end. When she opened them again, she stood triumphant over her foe. I remember other tales of this and how potions are seen differently in many worlds from other books I have read here. On fighty worlds like Kaldheim, there are often prizes like eternal life with which you could keep fighting forever. I remember reading that a god had the power to make such a potion. Something like, Isika alone knows how to distill the essence of the world tree into the cosmos elixir, a magical substance which grants the Scotia god family immortality. Yeah, I have great memory, luckily. Other worlds view the potion with more down-to-earth eyes. I remember a diary note from a soldier that was under attack from arrows before. A potion is no substitute for a skilled surgeon, but it will hold your bits in. Such a different view from our fairy tale. I read on about epic tales until I stumble onto an interesting one. Mark Tidin made an art piece of a man in armor that left the ghost of his sword that now fell down to the ground for a plowshare. The story says that in doing so, the people would have exiled a warrior, but would have gained the life that they could give as a farmer. And it then says, the Blade Master turned his fury to his new foes, root rot and cabbage slugs. I look at another picture, this time from Jasper Icing, where a warrior stands and commands the cows as well as the knights to move forwards. Under it there is a text with, "The arc of my blade has carved a path of light for the peace that will follow." I guess this book wants to teach me that sometimes a fight is necessary in order to create a time for peace that follows. Maybe my people were not so bad after all. I then read a very intricate story about a warrior named Limdu that was manipulated by a powerful artifact to gain strength and become the ring's possession. The warrior then came under the power of a new planeswalker that granted the warrior even more power, only to be under the control of more people. This story had previously been written in exactly the same manner for a game called Chambers and Dinosaurs, so I glanced past it and reused story fodder. The art from Robbie Trevino was beautiful though, showing a weak mage being handled by a middling hand as the mage seems to think they are in power, as they have so many minions beneath them, and meanwhile the sun is almost being engulfed by darkness. The warrior's fury past long forgotten. Beautiful art, sloppy stolen story. I remember the story that Killian was so excited about, and I learned about a weird moment in time where the god pharaoh dragon fought his brother. They were apparently both brothers from another world, and on Tarkir they fought a battle that would change the course of that world. If the pharaoh would win, the dragons would rule humans and on Tarkir, and it was the other way around for if the spirit dragon brother would win the fight. That is why recreating the energy of this battle could destroy dragons, or everything that is not a dragon. A literal crossroads in energy. A moment and now a spell. I wonder what other moments in history could become such a spell. My eye was caught by the front of a book about the second interplanar threat I learned about today, the Eldrazi. I recognized this one by its tentacles and many eyes. I read in this book that this titan was called Kozilek and he could invade the mind of any living being. Then, just by being so powerful, Kozilek could get any answer he wanted. I read that this titan could change reality, making it so that no one knew what was real, and ultimately Kozilek got to decide what would become reality. Like with every story here, I learned how to theoretically imitate Kozilek's ability by changing someone's mind and making someone forget something. The book said that to dwell within the blind eternities is unthinkable. To encounter those who do could shatter the mind. I wonder whether a planeswalker would have the same power as Kozilek then, or if they could at least withstand Kozilek's power because they traveled the blind eternities too. Maybe they were connected in some way. Thinking about a big war like the one against Extus and his Auric, I chose to shortly learn my first spell. I needed something against multiple enemies and found this spell from Kaladesh. Apparently they used it there to defeat things called gremlins that would eat their vehicles, and I wanted to protect my sloth right too. Grapeshot was the spell to use according to this stone. Just hold your hands together when you have a massive amount of mana formed there. I chose not to try it out in the library on my first day. Maybe if I wanted to join the Prismari, I should try it. I heard exemplary students Will and Rowan squabbling across the library. Will, they have a copy of Tales of the Fae here. Want me to read you a bedtime story? I saw Rowan was joking, Rumors were that they were from a fairy tale world. So maybe Will had some trauma from goblins like that. In fact, the book I saw them hold looks gruesome, especially imagining such a sight in reality. I hope that Will and everyone else from their world is okay with such evil goblins. I choose to read up about more goblins, this time from a now familiar world called Ravnica. Mystics was a goblin that rode around in a spider robot that already seemed unlikely. I instantly wonder whether she is the same goblin as the goblin in shock that Ral Zarek was talking about. I mean, they both seem to like spell slinging and getting hit by lightning. Okay, apparently the library wants me to read about destructive spells today. I opened a book that was about spells that could make you planeswalk. Killian's Gift had a fitting first chapter, with the Brothers' War. Another futile war fought for nothing, and this time Urza tried to end it with just an over-the-top spell. This first chapter literally just told me to conjure up a ton of mana to deal as much damage to everything around me as possible. I do understand now that to planeswalk you need a lot of stress and a lot of mana in order to pull it off. You might even need somewhere where you have nowhere else to go. I have learned so much about my first day in the library, but now it is time to join some classes. I have already learned about all the 5 colleges, but first years always start without a college, in order to learn a little about magical basic theory before having to make such a huge choice. I guess you could say I had an abundant harvest, and now get to choose what knowledge to take in for the coming day. Much like how rich people choose what they eat with their abundance of food supplies. My first class is given by Dean Lisette from Witherbloom. I can now sense the same smell as her book had. She tells us about being outside in nature and how there used to be someone on a treacherous world who felt like her life got too heavy. So she went on a big journey. This weight of her previous life only brought her the first step, like Lisette showed us in a piece of art from Mintum Hininen, who I was getting familiar with now. It all made me think of a traveler I read about yesterday. She was called Silvala and lived in the high city for a while, before going on some exploration for herself. She looks a lot like the person in Mintu's art, and I start to wonder how the artist knows of so many worlds. I know that Silvala fits in with the personality of Lisette too, so outgoing, but only towards their friends and family. They can both seem pretty close to others. It makes me want to become friends with Lisette too. I hope Silvala got to change the world in her own way. Lisette then teaches us of another example of how we could escape society's buildings and rules. It is by destroying what society has built. But she also said that we should not destroy from others. We should try to live like nomads in the forest. I think Lisette has not yet read about Crozen Forest. Because I learned from the real Crozen stories that there live Camelites. I remember a quote from yesterday where one said, "Give up these unnatural weapons, these scrolls. Heart and mind and fist are enough." It taught me that the Camelites are actually aggressive towards civilization, and while I believe we should live in harmony, not in a constant fight with the other peoples of Arcavios and beyond. I moved on to a Lorehold class from Dean Augusta. It is labeled How to be Safe with History, which sounds like the most double class ever, because how could history ever be not safe? I guess the Lorehold students who turn statues to life in their most bloodthirsty shapes is one way. Augusta teaches us about spells that were forbidden, because they are too dangerous, and I can remember one from Killian's book. It was called Day of Judgment, and Director Taifa had said that this must not become common knowledge. The consequences of such a spell are too great. Lock it away in the restricted archive and destroy its record in the catalog. I guess having high up friends is handy after all. Augusta continues to show that sometimes it is good to believe in higher powers, and most of the times we should be wary of them. She shows us a piece from Matthew G. Lewis where the common people have been used to summon one greater being. I have no idea what this is from, so I think it is more conceptual. Still, it is a clear lesson. Augusta quotes, Evil is to be unshackled, not slain. Unlock your foe and release the miracle within. I have honestly no idea what this means, and Augusta went on and on about the concept of evil being used for good. We should believe in that the path is right. Stuff like that. That does seem dangerous for history. I do think that parts of her message are beautiful though. She shows us a knight that seems from a story that has been saved by the divine, to fight another day for what she believes in. I think this is amazing, but she does need to think about what she believes in. My people have shown this in the past. Augusta rambles on about repeating history and how we should always do what our ancestors have, and all I can think about is my people who thought they were doing good, because they had gotten boons from their gods, while in the meantime they had destroyed whole cities for that same cause. I think we should be careful with the powerful hands that surround us. After these 2 classes I thought I would have known what to pick, but I don't. I tried to remember a spell to help me choose my next class, and I remember Grape Shot. That said, to force mana into one place to amplify anything like a fireball. I wonder whether I could do this with my mind. Maybe I could even invent a new spell right there. Maybe Mintu Hininen will actually make a new art piece about this moment. That would be weird, as I consciously think about this. I get in touch with the universe, and as I do, I converge the mana of so many spellweavers together to find my answer. It is Quandrix next. Of course, the first lesson of Dean Imram is on how to stop a spell. Actually, this feels logical. After learning not to explode a whole city, it would be nice to stop such a spell. Imram tells us to shatter your opponent's spell with enough force and you will shatter their confidence with it. I actually don't think that's a bad thing, as without confidence people start to think. I think this world has a bit too much confidence and might need some shutting down. I now think about all the other spells I have seen that stop your opponent, and maybe we should learn to be a little bit more calm, so that we can start to see the natural cycles of nature, so that we can see what is truly right, if there is a right at all. I start smiling in the middle of theory class with Imraham, and I am one of 2 students to ever do that. Which of course Imraham notices, unlike me. I just enjoy the negating lessons. Imraham caught me after class and tutored me with a spell that he said he learned from a time wizard. Apparently, he had only given this lesson to Simone before. He said it was because he trusted us to be careful and diligent in our works. This is a massive compliment, as Simone is the top Quandrix student right now. Said to be able to teleport even. Imraham taught me this second day of school how to look into the many pathways of destiny and how to choose one. He told me this quote and said, "The wish most often granted is the wish to choose one's own destiny." I think this is especially nice to hear after all the troubles of my ancestry, and maybe Strixhaven was modeled after this huge lesson of Arcavios as a whole. Imraham continued with the newest large question the world had after Simone solved teleportation. It is how to alter time, and although chronomancers are known, Strixhaven was yet unaware how the spells worked exactly. Again, you would need not to know how such a spell works to counter it, but learning it to every student could be good and will be very bad, as many people would misuse the power. That is why too many people should not uncover these powers, like time travel and teleportation. It is also why the faces of people that do use time magic are always concealed. Lastly, Imraham gave me a homework assignment as I had told him what I had learned about elemental magic. He said he knew about an emperor from Kamigawa who had a signature spell that used wind to stop attacks and spells. She had used it to protect people over and over, and Imraham told me to go meet with Kiana to learn this practical spell. Something told me that Kiana would not teach me counter magic first, but I would like to know more about my chosen school. On my way to Kiana's garden, I find a small outhouse. Outside there is a book next to a way too extra teacher's stare. On it is a book with an amazing depiction from Anato Finstark about a demon controlling another soul in order to grant them their wish. The description says that demons prefer to deal with those who believe themselves too wise to be fooled. When I finished reading the depiction, I sensed someone near me. It is teacher Liliana, of whom we learned the real name just a few years ago. Images flooded my mind as I tried to imagine why she would be reading such a book. I saw a very dangerous demonic body over the body of this teacher. While she was wearing more fun clothes, I sensed agony and fear from her too. Then Liliana put her hand on my shoulder and said, "You did not mean to pry in my memories, did you? I have a friend that used to do that all the time." I shake my head, no, as I did not even know I was reading her memories. So this really happened? Before I left, Liliana showed me another page about demonic consultations that was meant to show the good side of dealing with evil. I had heard about this before today, but when you are careful, you can gain a lot of power from dealing with demons. If you are not, you will fall down the stairs of doom even faster. So take enough, but never too much, is what the teacher left me with. I nodded with an eyebrow raised, as I know I would not choose Witherbloom anytime soon. What I had felt from teacher Liliana was profound, something that would not let her go. I could feel the pain of having no skin, of your skin betraying you, of trying to be pure but failing because of how you were. As if Liliana had lost power with every spell that she had cast, with every step she took, and every hand that touched her, she must have felt more alone. It also felt as if she was now reaching out for something to fill the void of that pain. Something had to be repaid. I can't really shake the feeling until I get to the gardens. Kiana is working in the gardens here, and I tell her that Imbraham sent me. She tells me what I expected and she shows me her garden. I can feel another image, of myself embracing the feelings of nature in this garden, of feeling the plants reaching out to me and trying to listen to me at the same time. I could feel them trying to grant me power, trying to command the animals here, trying to bring dying plants to life and telling me spells long forgotten by humans. I am home, is what the gardens tell me. Kiana meanwhile smiles and tells me that she knows someone that is practical with magic when she sees them. Kiana put her hand on my shoulder and for the first time today I felt safe. All around me I felt the emotions of the living, and after such a long day inside of the library and with so many impressions, I felt like the garden was my small bubble inside of an increasingly stormy life. Like the Turau carvings say, neither blade nor tempest can assail the serenity of a tranquil mind. With that, if you are here, thank you for watching. I hope you liked all of the cards and please tell me which is your favorite. I believe the Mystical Archive is a beautiful collection of art and lessons, and it is not something I will forget quickly.